how we want to play. So a big part of this presentation will actually be talking about the reasoning and the why as to why the coaches have chosen to implement a particular style. And we'll be covering both the O and the D. So firstly, linking back to the presentation that Mark did a couple of weeks ago, the Tasmanian way, there's some key behaviours and values that are really important, that are really overarching to any X's and O's that we may run. And that's being selfless, competitive, tough, disciplined, and having a high basketball IQ. So if you don't have any of those things, it doesn't matter what your X's and O's are like. You're not going to be very good. So we'll jump straight to the why. And the why will be pretty consistent throughout for most of the things that we touch on today. And we're a development program. So the why is really about giving, I'll read this out, to give Basketball Tasmania program athletes the opportunity to chase their dreams through representing their state on a national stage. So it's all about developing the athletes from participation level through development, through to high performance, and ideally, hopefully they can reach elite gameplay. And really our program and how we play is all geared towards upskilling them, teaching them the game so that they, when they leave the program, they have a strong foundation for how to play basketball. And as a development program, 3 key things with this: it has to be fun, everyone needs to be able to play, and you want to have competitive games. So we was watching a video recently from one of the development managers of New Zealand Rugby, and he touched on, if you had a KPI for an under 12s coach, it wouldn't be the number of championships you've won, it would actually be the number of players that would return to play for you the following year. So it's all about development, fun, being competitive. So our offensive goal at BTAS, in a nutshell, is to get a great shot. And we get great shots through ball movement, player movement, and the extra pass. What is a great shot? A great shot will differ based on the team that you are coaching, and the level of, I suppose, skill of the players. But generally for us, it'll be a great shot will be layups and uncontested threes, ideally from a paint touch. So how can we get great shots? Basically, pace, poise, and penetration, that forms the foundation of every offensive possession that we have. Flow is our base offensive system, and then above that, you have the various concepts and specials that we teach each of the athletes. Touching on the pace, poise, penetration component, so this was implemented, I believe, back 2012, 2013 by BA, and specifically Andre Lamanis and Brendan Joyce had a lot of input into this. So why have we adopted pace, poise, penetration? I suppose the main thing is on the right there. We want to have a pathway for our athletes to be able to play at that elite level. So teaching them concepts that are being taught at the highest level in Australia makes sense to us. What pace, poise, penetration does, it allows you to manage different phases of a possession. So it effectively splits the 24-second shot clock into 8-second intervals. Now, what this does is it aids development through creating an awareness and purpose of what's expected within each of those 8 seconds. And ultimately, through that awareness and purpose, you can create and shoot predictable shots, which will help with your rebounding philosophy and your D-trans. So the pace phase, what we're looking to do is ideally attack. And so we'd like to score roughly 6 points a quarter in the first 8 seconds of a shot clock. We do that through kicker heads, paint touches, then we have various early offense concepts such as drag screens, smash screens, punch, double drags. The whole point of a pace phase of getting these kicker heads and paint touches is ideally to get these great shots. And so if we can get layups early or paint touch kick out threes, we feel like we'll be in a good spot. Floor spots are really important, and we specifically have our floor spots to ensure we are able to flow into our offense, being our base offense flow as seamlessly and as quickly as possible. So all of our drags, smash, punches, double drags, they end up with the bigs in the appropriate position so we can get it to the reversal post and get into the first loaded side of the flow. So everything's geared towards that. So I'd like the coaches to have a think about, what are you planning to do offensively? What's your base offensive system? And do your rules regarding floor spots in transition in this pace phase aligned with that? Now, probably wouldn't be a presentation from me if I didn't have some numbers and data in there, being I'm an accountant and I'm a numbers man. On the right here, we have a chart from the last 2 years of AJCs, and it shows on the bottom, we have average pace, and on the left, we have the average offensive rating. And so hopefully you can see the green dot here. That's us compared to the other states. Our pace has clearly been, on average, the slowest out of all the states in the past 2 years of AJCs. And it's not necessarily because we want to play slower, it's just the type of athletes that we have. And we feel like we don't necessarily get a heap of great shots in those first 8 seconds. So we're willing to continue to move the ball and move players to try and generate a great shot later. So it was interesting to see that, like, we do have the slowest pace on average quite comfortably compared to the other states. So that top state there in terms of offensive rating was the NBA Global Academy from a couple of years, and then you've got Victoria, and our offensive rating of around 90 is right in line with New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia. So here's a video of us in the pace phase from a couple of years ago. So that score went in at 17 on the clock. I'll just rewind it and play again. Just early, what can we get? Kobe has a great push here. Kick out. It's 21 on the clock right now. So it's taken 3 seconds to get the rebound and get the ball into an operating area. We've got our floor spots ready to go, ready to drag into a drag screen. Throw it on the reversal post, straight into flow, back cut, layup. Like, that's really good stuff. The poise phase. So in the poise phase is the middle 8 seconds. And here we're really trying to move the ball, move the players, extra passes to generate great shots. So what's really important here that we found is teaching shot selection. So we want players to stay aggressive, but we don't want to start taking contested bad shots. So teaching shot selection is a really important part. The other thing is, we don't want to shoot bad shots. We also don't want to hurt ourselves and throw the ball away. So typically we've had a low turnover percentage at AJC. And so if you look at the chart on the right there, it shows, again, pace on the bottom against, however, on the left, we've got turnover percentage. So the lower, the better for turnover percentage. So we here are about average third best in terms of turnover percentage from the last 2 years. So we are looking after the ball. We are staying competitive in games because we're not hurting ourselves. And so that's a goal of what we do. So with that, in order to have low turnovers, you really got to have great skill development and be able to teach things such as being strong with the ball, chinning the basketball, being strong, pass fakes, various things like that. In the poise phase, we want to make sure that our spacing is on point, particularly with split kick extra concepts. And our spacing is largely derived from flow, okay, being our base offense. So why flow? Again, it comes to development. With flow, we think it's great because everyone's involved. All 5 players are involved. They're all touching the basketball. They're all having constant movement. It ensures really great spacing. So we get effectively with our flow, it's 4 out, 1 in. And at a junior level, with under 12s and under 14s, we've even modified it so it's 5 out. So the spacing concepts are modern when we're running flow. One of the biggest reasons why we do it is because everyone can play and it suits our player types. So we're not running an offense that requires a dominant low post player or multiple low post scorers and big athletes. Like, we don't generally have in Tassie, unfortunately, the athletes that are long, big, and can create a great shot for themselves without action and without team basketball. So a system-based offense is really what we need in Tassie to be competitive and to be successful. The other thing about flow is that the ball moves quickly, and flow is run at its best when the ball is moving quickly, the players are moving quickly, obviously with great patience in terms of timing of cuts, but the action is run at a good pace. It makes it really hard to defend. The other benefit of running flow is there's a clear approach to teach concepts, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. But the flags to the right, Lemanis and BA implemented flow years ago, and it's been the core offensive system for the Boomers. Prior to that, it was effectively called, or part of it was taken from Europe, and Lithuania had been running European ball screen motion, which is effectively flow for years and having lots of success with it. And I've got there listed Barking Abbey, which is a program in the UK, which again have been running flow. There's a really excellent podcast with their head coach, James Veer, that was released about a month ago. And we'll share that with you, but it talks about the benefits of flow for their program, how they've effectively used it to send close to 100 athletes over to US colleges, and just the benefits and how it teaches skill development and various things. So it's definitely worth a listen if you get a chance. So we'll share that link with you. So flow, it isn't just back cut, dribble, handoff. Okay, so the system has evolved. For flow haters will tell you it's just back cut, dribble, handoff, but we know here in Tassie that that's not the case. It's a great opportunity to teach basketball concepts. So to the right there, we've got a handful of the concepts that we use out of flow. So from us having flow as our base offense and incorporating these additional concepts, we're effectively teaching the kids how to play the game, and we're developing their skills in a variety of offensive areas. The other thing after there that I've got listed is the play after the play and automatics. And again, this comes down to an awareness of what's next. For instance, play after the play, we're talking about if you have a ball screen or you have an action and you don't actually create an advantage or create a great shot out of that, what do you flow into next? And I think here in Tassie, we do a great job of being able to recognise, do we go into a 2-side action out of flow? Do we go into a veloaded side with 3 and actually play out of a reversal post? Do we throw it into the post and get into our post action? So with the system that we've developed, it really allows us to seamlessly transition from one concept to another and to have success with that. So again, as coaches, it'd be good if you had to think about, with what you're running, what are your plays after the play? What do you go to when things break down and don't necessarily create a great shot for you initially? And the other thing is automatics, which is a similar concept, but we're talking about on a pick and pop where we have a punch screen pick and pop. We dive the reversal post to create space. On a post action, post catch, what is our post action? So those are some things to think about in terms of your coaching philosophy. But the main reason we incorporate those in flow in Tassie is to develop the athletes. So here's a couple of clips from the poise phase, being the middle 8 seconds of a shot clock. First clip here, talking about those automatics. Punch from Jacob, great cut from Lockie, punch and pop, straight into the back cut finish. So I'll just go back to that again. So we talk about automatics. We've done a really good job here of getting to our floor spots at the time of the punch screen. Jack's probably a little bit slow, but we hear Lockie has seen at the reversal post that the punches happen, so that Jacob's going to pop, clears out, catching it, great cut, great pass, excellent finish. That's a great shot for us. Our post action, we don't have those dominant bigs that can score. We throw it into the post to score, but we do have playmakers and shooters that can benefit from our action out of a post. And I love this clip here. It just shows how with ball movement, we get it zipping around, can be really effective in flow. And so that's, other than the first clip where we went with the handoff, or the back cut, I should say, these other clips, it's not your typical back cut handoff stuff. It's handoff, pin down, great passing. So I'm flying through this a little bit, Nick. Do I need to slow down, or we're going okay?
I think it's real good. Maybe you just, we've had one question that's come through to me.
Yeah.
Again, I put it in the chat and everyone, so if there's any questions for you, feel free to send it through to me via chat. So can you just, I guess, elaborate a little bit more on what you mean in as far as poise phase, on the types of shots you're looking for, in as far as the question that came through was, would you allow an open free in the poise phase? So what exactly do you mean by what we're looking for?
Yeah. Well, touched on before, we're looking for great shots, right? So we're looking for a great shot. A great shot will be different for each team. So a great shot for under 12s is a lot different to a great shot from here with this under 20 state team. So it really depends on your athletes and their skill level. Ideally, if you can get a layup or an uncontested 3 from a good 3-point shooter, that's a great shot, and we'll be happy with those. If it's to address the question specifically regarding an uncontested 3, if they're not a great shooter, well, it's probably not a great shot. So we'd probably want to move it and see if we can find something else better later in the shot clock. But ideally, if we can get a layup or an uncontested 3 from a good shooter, that's the sort of shot that we're after. We ideally would stay away from mid-range shots as much as possible, unless, of course, they're completely uncontested from a reasonable shooter. Okay. All right, we'll keep progressing. So the final stage is the penetration stage, being the last 8 seconds of a shot clock. So a couple of things that we mentioned to our athletes here is being comfortable late clock and trying to get heat on the rim. So we want to teach our athletes to be disciplined in these last 8 seconds and not to settle for a contested shot with 6 or 5 seconds on the shot clock. We've got the full 8 seconds. Let's use them and try and get the best shot possible, and ideally have that be a great shot. The other benefit of playing later in the shot clock is that you can take advantage of the D. So if the D has been playing, they've played for 20 seconds so far, you've hopefully got them scrambling and in rotations. If you can keep the ball moving and get some extra passes, hopefully you can get an uncontested 3, which should be a great shot. I've got O rebound rules there, and it's just something to have a think about regarding what do you do after your team gets an offensive rebound. So if you get an offensive rebound and you can't put it straight back in, or you can't kick it out for a wide open 3, and you get back into some sort of structure, what do you run? Because by the time you get into your structure, whether it's a horn set, you might go into a middle pick and roll. For us at BTAS, we run BTAS concepts, so we might go into quicks to splits, we might try and get into motion, we'll try and get into some of those familiar actions. What will you run in the last 10 seconds to try and generate a great shot for you? So something to think about if you haven't thought about it very often. The other thing to consider is we try and teach the athletes to avoid ball screens under 5 seconds or less on the shot clock. The reason for that being that if teams switch, which a lot of teams are doing these days, the advantage created from a switch, whether it be a mismatch, it's much harder to attack and take advantage of that with only 5 seconds or sub 5 seconds on the shot clock. So we feel you're better off if it's less than 5 seconds, rather than going and trying screening them, isolate, penetrate, kick, see if you can get a look that way. So here's a clip here. I've been playing into penetration phase. So it's probably hard to see, but there's about 18 seconds left in the game, in the quarter, I should say. We've started in flow. We've been patient. We've ended up into a ball screen, which right about 5 or 6 on the clock. So I was touching on those ball screen principles that we talked about. But I think this is a great possession of showing that even with flow, we've got back cut, handoff here, all the different concepts we teach. Double cut, pin down, balls reversed, post action, flare screen, throw on, another flare, respace, middle ball screen, roller, duck in from the other big, great finish. Like in that one clip, there's that many different concepts that have been applied. It's evidence of the program teaching the kids how to play basketball, and it's not just back cut, dribble, handoff. So a little bit about the D now. So our defensive goal is to have teams score over us. And so, or players score over us. For that to happen, right, we want to make sure we are disruptive, we contain, and we contest. So they're the 3 keys to ensure that opposition aren't getting uncontested shot opportunities. So how we do that, our defensive system, the foundation is our D-trans. Our base defensive system is half-court man being pack. And then above that, we have various disruption and various defensive concepts which we apply. I'll touch on some of those shortly. So firstly, D-trans, this is all about disruption right here. We want to ensure we are, especially at the junior level, we're trying to prevent layups being scored from the opposition. So we're preventing the opposition fast break, and we're trying to slow the basketball and stop layups occurring. The other part of our D-trans philosophy is having a structured rebounding philosophy to hopefully improve our possession game. So if we can be clear on who attacks the glass, and then at the moment, we've had tagging up as a principle where everyone tags up and it gives us a chance to rebound. Hopefully that creates additional opportunities and additional possessions for us. And it also has the benefit of being able to tag and jam the basketball. So that was some of the reasons why we tagged up, being able to slow the ball and prevent layups firstly, and secondly, trying to get some additional possessions. It also teaches the athletes, again, it's a development thing, it also teaches them that defense starts once a shot goes up. And so we're currently talking about it with the coaches are discussing whether we change tagging up. Some of the reasons being, when we go away to nationals, we aren't necessarily finding that we get those additional rebounding opportunities that we would hope. And if that's the case, we may be better off sending some people back to just ensure we don't have any layups scored against us rather than attacking the glass. The other benefit of potentially changing our defensive transition would be to teach the athletes that there's other ways of doing things. And so that when they go and play for other coaches or within other systems, they're wary that it's not just about tagging up, and there's different things to consider when you're converting from offense to defense. When it comes to disruption, I've got a couple of clips here. I was fortunate enough to have Kobe in my team who was a great disruptor full court. Being able to pick up the ball early, so your pick-up point, really important, great D there. Being able to turn them over. And then our hit D concepts. So by being matched up and being aggressive, being able to turn them over and create a scoring opportunity. I love this clip, like not just from a defensive perspective, but once we've turned them over, just for unselfishness and the number of passes that we've made within a 3-second time span, it's pretty cool. It's a big time basketball play. So again, it's about having a think about what you are doing with your D-trans. So if you're not tagging up, what are your rules regarding crashing the glass? How many are you sending back? Are you sending none back? Are you sending them all to the glass? Do you send some to the nail, a couple back? Like there's such a wide variety of ways you can approach your D-trans. It's just really important that as a coach, you have your philosophy and you're able to articulate that to the athletes. So our base half-court man is Pack D. And so with the half-court man, our main objective is to contain and to contest shots. We, again, as a development program, we need to teach our athletes how to defend one-on-one. Going forward, if they're not going to be able to play if they can't defend. So that's why we've focused the majority of our programming on half-court man principles. So why pack? Well, firstly, it reduces penetration because you're clogging up the driving lanes. Secondly, it suits our athletes. So similar to the flow commentary, where we talk about we don't have the bigs, we don't have the really long athletes. Pack suits that style. The counter to pack, or I shouldn't say the counter, but an alternative to pack would be really getting up in the lanes and denying. And to be able to do that effectively, you really want to have long, athletic wings and athletic players who can actually be disruptive, tip some basketballs. But what you're also opening yourself up to is more back cuts. And so with the additional back cuts, you're going to want to have rim protection to counteract that. And it's just something in Tassie we don't have a lot of. So for us, pack made the most sense. It's not necessarily the right way to go about it for everybody, but for us, we feel like pack is the option for our half-court man. Another principle for us in the half-court is not fouling. So we want to prevent teams from getting into the bonus. So walling up, chest blasts, showing your hands are all things that we preach regularly at practice to try and keep the opposition team out of a bonus. So it's just a couple of other things regarding our man D. We ensure that we teach a variety of different ball screen D approaches. So we'll have, when you have state teams, we'll have a base for side ball screen, a base for middle ball screens, but then we'll generally try and teach different ways of guarding the ball screen, not only for a defensive tactical approach, but it helps the athletes offensively when they have to go against certain ball screens that the opposition might throw at us to know what the counters are. How do we attack switching? How do we attack weak or ice D? What do we do against hard show? So slipping of screens and all these concepts that we've touched on, which could be a whole nother presentation, are things that we teach to help develop our athletes and develop their basketball IQ. Our off-ball D, although we're predominantly a pack in the half court, we will teach the athletes different concepts such as switching of down screens and switching of certain actions, and then also situational denials. So denying the ball as it's entered into the offense, denying a reversal, denying their best opposition player from getting a touch. Anything to be disruptive is beneficial. And so again, it's things which you can incorporate. And if that's what you want to do with your team, it's great. It's just a matter of being clear on it and ensuring that you're teaching it to the athletes. Post D is important. So how do you want to guard the post? For us, it will differ based on the team and the attributes of each team. But generally, will you double from captain? Will you come from the passer? Will you come from the shooter? Are you not a double team? Are you just whiting and fronting the post? If you're fronting, do you make sure we have ball pressure and captain on the weak side? So there's lots of things that you do, and typically as a smaller state in Tassie, we need to be on point with our post D and making sure that it's something we teach for kids, because when we go away to nationals, there's some quite large opponents we need to come up against. Rebound is important, especially as a smaller state. Make sure we block out. We've got to rebound as a gang. And then the last thing I touch on is the man versus zone ratio. So for us in our program, we probably play 90% man, 10% zone. And the zone is really used as a disruptor and a change up to influence the momentum and to change the momentum of the game. It's not necessarily something that we stay in for quarters at a time, which may not necessarily be the best way to go about it. Like, there may be situations where zone is the best thing for a particular team. Syracuse in NCAA have play solely a 2-3 zone, but they go out and recruit 6'10" wings and 6'5" point guards, and they've got the length to be really effective in that space. So if you are a zone team and you want to be a predominantly a zone team, some things to consider are, so what zone are you playing? If it's a 2-3, for instance, how are you guarding the high post? What are you doing regarding if a ball is swung from one side of the floor to the other? Are you bumping the guard down, or is the wing closing out to it and then getting bumped down by the guard? Are you Xing out with that? What are your rules for a side ball screen? What are your rules for a middle ball screen? What are the rules for offensive rebounding? Do you trap the corners? Yes or no? If you do trap the corners, how do you rotate out of that? What's your call for that? So it's not just a matter of singing out 2-3 and rolling down into a 2-3 zone. And I'm not saying that's what's happening, but I feel like at the junior level across the state, those teams that are playing a fair bit of zone could probably be focusing on some of these aspects and really teaching it to the athletes to help them develop and to increase their basketball IQ regarding Zone D. So that's me done, Nick. How'd I go for time? About half an hour? Wasn't too bad. I'll take that. So thanks very much, everybody, for tuning in. If there's any questions, I'm sure Nick will ask them to me now.
Well, thanks for that, Nate. I thought, excellent presentation and really good explanation of the why and the how of some of the things we do with the BTAS programs. Do have a couple of questions that have come through. If there are any other questions, send through to me now, and we can definitely discuss them and get to them. Talking about the defense, so this is a question from me, I guess. Can you talk about and really, I guess, explain the reasoning behind the importance of not fouling with your defense, whatever phase you're in, and explain the importance of that.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to create easy scoring opportunities for the O, and by fouling and sending into the line, that's what you're doing. You're also stopping the clock each time you foul, and so the momentum is shifting, which gives the defense, the more you put the D to the line, the more opportunities there are for the opposition to actually get set up in their full court man or hit concepts, and so that can impact the game as well. You've also got the aspect of just keeping players on the floor and just trying to create a rhythm and get some momentum going offensively, and able to, from a coaching perspective, being able to play your best lineup when it matters. So there's a lot of things that go into it, but I would say the biggest thing is just trying to make it as difficult as possible for the opposition to score. And generally, we bail teams out too much by sending them to the line rather than having them shoot over the top of us, which is a much lower percentage shot.
Very good. And a question that's just come through here now, staying on defense.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, you really spoke a lot about one-on-one defense and, the importance of, being able to keep your player in front one-on-one. Can you be a little bit more, I guess, specific and detail in the half court with your one-on-one principles? Where are you trying to, shade the ball? Are you setting it middle, baseline? And I guess the reasoning behind that.
Yeah. Well, again, it can differ based on whatever team you want. From us at BTAS, as a pack team, we try and shade to their help as much as possible. And there may be situational things where you have a player who is really left-hand dominant and you want to just shade them to the right no matter what, or then you can change your foot angles, you do it that way. But with Pack D, you've got the support. So it actually allows you to climb up and in and defend 1v1 closer with additional ball pressure and to really dictate where you send that offensive player, knowing that you've got support either side. So BTAS, generally we're sending to wherever the help is, which may be to the middle, it may be at the elbows, it may be in other areas, but that is generally where we send them.
I think just, I guess, to expand on what you said there, and you definitely have spoken about throughout, like, there's obviously a reason behind why within programs we teach things certain ways. And it's important to note, like you spoke about the D-trans as an example, that, we're always looking to, change things up and make adjustments where appropriate. And, what you've presented on tonight is, as you said, it's not the only way to do something. And, talking about the one-on-one defense as an example, like if you watch most NBA teams, on the wing, they're going to be sending it to the side, they're going to be sending it to the baseline. And the reason behind that is it ties in with that pick and roll defense. And then there are some other teams who have different push points. And then there are, when I was in Kansas with Fernie, he was really heavy on you send it middle with your Pac D. So I think that's, for all the coaches that are on, it's a really important thing to note is, I think you've definitely done it throughout, Nate. It's, really, if anything, stimulating thought about, okay, well, what's the reasoning behind why we do this stuff? One other question. So jumping back to the offensive stuff.
Yep.
And you talk about, pace, poise, penetration. How do you implement that, and how do you discuss it, and I guess get the athletes to understand the types of shots we want at certain times, whether that's, at practice or even, when you're at a tournament or in game? How do you get them to understand what we're looking for?
Yeah, good question. In terms of how you work on it, so if you wanted to increase the opportunities to score in the pace phase, there's drills that you can do where you emphasize advancing the ball within 3 to 4 seconds in the shot clock. And then you can play with a reduced shot clock for periods of time where you can say, okay, we've got 10-second shot clocks now. We're trying to get the best shot possible. And from there, we're looking for layups and we're looking for kick out threes. And that's what we're trying to get in this phase. The other thing, the best way to teach the athletes is just to continually coach them on it. Continually coach them on what you consider a good shot is. And it's not something that you want to ruin their confidence, because when you're teaching shot selection, it can be a really fine line between saying what's a good shot or coaching what's a good shot and hurting the confidence of the athlete. And so you want to make sure you strike that balance. And I find the best way to do that is just being really clear and upfront at the start of drills or at the start of your practice about what is a good shot, what are we trying to achieve. And if you really simplify that and you coach them up on that, it's easier to then say, well, it's not one of these 3 shots that we're trying to get. It's probably not a great shot. Okay, so we should be trying to get something better later on in the shot clock.
Makes sense. And I think to add to what you kind of said there, when it comes to discussing with the athletes and trying to not, hurt their confidence, but still get them to understand it's, for me, a good strategy is obviously you ask them the question like, oh, what do you think about that shot? And you'll find most often than not, if you've made it really clear on what, types of shots you're looking for, they'll be able to answer it and they'll get the point that, okay, yeah, that wasn't a good one. I can get better than that. There have been a few sarcastic questions come through. I might ignore those.
Yeah, don't worry about those.
I won't mention, but I'm sure you can guess who those questions came from. Mark has joined us. So, Mark, any questions from you or anything you want to add?
I don't want to sort of jump in too far because I don't know exactly what, Nate's added into his presentation other than what we've seen leading in. A couple of things on shot selection, because it is one of the more difficult things to teach, is you get what you accept. So you need to be consistent with your message at practice so players have clarity in a game. And the easiest way that I've taught it for the younger kids is the ball needs to be in the paint or the post before you can shoot from the perimeter. And you're looking for roughly an 80 to 85% success rate. So it's not going to be perfect. And then you've got to find the balance. And sometimes as you get into the older age groups, it's other people or some people in teams have the green light. And an example of that is Rain with the under 20 men. You might have guys in your team that you just got to give them the green light to say, I'm going to back you and you'll make the right decisions. And as you get into older age groups, the players can do that predominantly most of the time. So that's a point that I wanted to make about shot selection. The other thing is that you'll be good at what you emphasise, whether you're on O or D. So whatever you put more time into, Nate touched on pace and having some, might play with a 10-second shot clock or an 8-second shot clock. You might get a point for a kick ahead if you throw it over halfway on a pass. So you just encourage whatever you emphasise within your drill is what you'll become good at from that standpoint. And I think overall, because there's been so much talk about the BTAS system and the way we do things, I think your philosophy has to be just asking yourself a lot of questions and not contradicting yourself from offense to defense. They have to marry. So if you're teaching one thing on offense, then it has to marry up with your defensive philosophy. It can't go against that, if that makes sense. So I think to really nut out, and Nate touched on it earlier, I think you just ask yourself a lot of questions. What would I do here? What would I do there? And you just continually doing that right through every phase of the game to then construct your philosophy. But what I've saw so far, like really good job, Nate, and been at under 12s, right where it starts tonight. So, and we did discuss shot selection with
Very good.
with 10-year-olds. So,
very good. One final question for you, Nate. That's come through. So you spoke about post play and post action. I think it's quite well, noted how that has evolved over time. 20 years ago, what you want to try and get out of a post touch is different to what you now want to get out of a post touch. Can you just touch on that a little bit, whether it's what we're looking for or how that has evolved?
Oh, it certainly has evolved. And I think analytics has played a big part of that at the pro level and in the international game, particularly the NBA. The value of a points per possession from a post touch are less than other methods of scoring. Okay, so the prevalence of a three-point shot has resulted in scores or shot attempts such as post touches and mid-range jumpers being less valuable. And so from an analytics perspective, it's a lower percentage shot. In terms of how it works, from us in BTAS, it's mostly down to personnel as to why we play out of a post a particular way. we don't have those bangers who we can just throw it in and go and get a post score for us. So having those actions is beneficial for us. I think it will continue to evolve where it's going to be situation dependent, and you'll probably see it a little bit more in the NBA playoffs where matchups play a part. And if a team like Houston, who have gone all in on the small ball, can be exposed through some post catches and some scores inside, I think that we'll see more of that. Also, I think we'll probably see post catches and post entries come out of non-traditional ways. So rather than just roll it down and throw it into the post, we'll actually look for post catches out of pick and roll and rolling hard to the rim and getting the post catch, or some off-ball screening actions to get a deep post catch and a quick score, rather than the traditional back down post catches. So that's where I see it's changing.
Very good. Thanks for that, Nate. And one thing you didn't, I guess, didn't come up in the numbers is, we as a state do shoot a lot of threes, and to an extent, that's the way the game's going. But I think, like you said there, it's about finding a good balance. And for any coaches who are wondering why NBA teams shoot a lot of threes, well, just quick maths. Shooting 33% from the 3-point line is the exact same as shooting 50% from 2. So that's just something for you to think about there. Otherwise, thanks everyone for jumping on tonight. Mark or Nate, any final thoughts?
Nothing from me, Nick. Thanks everybody for jumping in.
Appreciate the support, and look forward to our next one.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. I'm sure we'll see you around the traps soon enough.